Welcome to the Belonging Podcast by Elevate Villages. Our intention here is to open hearts, widen circles, and live in the belief that we truly belong to each other. Today's conversation is going to sit in some really tender places. We're going to be talking about belonging when the world makes it very clear that you are not wanted. We're going to be exploring the tragic reality of what happens during and after incarceration, and also what happens when you're displaced from the only country you've ever called home. We've got a lot to cover. My guest today, Angela Sage-Larson, walks quietly and faithfully alongside people living in these realities. She doesn't speak about these issues from a distance. She speaks from proximity, from relationship, and from love. I am honored and deeply humbled anytime I spend with her, but for the next hour to be exploring what it means to see one another as human and worthy of belonging is the great joy of my life today. Angela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's an honor to be with you. And you're just one of the bright, shining lights in my life. When we met, there was just an instant connection. I believe our first conversation was approximately 5 hours long. So this is just a lot of fun. It's just a continuation of the things that you and I both hold dear. And so I appreciate having the opportunity to talk more about what we love.
Perfect. Well, before we do, I have the great privilege of knowing you, but my audience perhaps doesn't. So let's start with if there was a season in your life where you felt especially unseen or deeply held, and how did that shape the way that you love others today?
Nice. Well, I think I kind of had a heads up that that was one of the things we would be talking about. And a moment where I felt deeply held, I kept going back to this memory over and over, and I realized how formative this moment was. When I was a little girl, my mom was just a phenomenally talented gardener, and we had a gorgeous garden, and we had rhododendrons that were the size of trees. We lived in the Pacific Northwest. There was a day that I was tucked under one of these rhododendrons, and I just was using my imagination. I just was being open and free and basically just being like a child and just letting my thoughts explore possibilities and play, and I had this little sense that it's almost like a lot of people have maybe had this experience where they grew up feeling like they had an invisible friend. And that's how I felt. I felt like I had this invisible friend, and her name was Susie Sunshine, probably because I grew up in Oregon. So I was like, she's going to be associated with the sunshine. So I had Susie Sunshine, and I had this little doll. She was like this big. She was kind of fairy sized. And I felt like Susie Sunshine and I were under this rhododendron, and I had this feeling. It wasn't words, it was this feeling of great potential, that there's
Mm.
something special for me to be and do. And I just had this sense that that I was needed. That's a big word for how little I was. Um, But that moment was formative because my parents were both very service oriented. My dad worked with senior citizens his entire career. And my mom was a Christian Science practitioner, which means that people called her for prayerful help. I actually followed in her footsteps. It's what I'm doing now. And it might be partly because of that moment. Um, our lives were always about looking for ways to help other people. And so I ended up writing and illustrating a children's book series about Pedalink the fairy. And Pedalink was inspired by this moment that I had under the roadies. And the point of Pedalink, the theme of all these books that I wrote, is to believe in yourself and believe in the greater good. And there's that sense that we we belong to something greater than ourselves. And when we connect with that greater good, we're able to see our own worth, and the result of seeing our own worth isn't just, "Oh, look at me, I'm so great," but we're able to contribute without fear and without self-consciousness, and that's really counter to a lot of the ways that kids are growing up right now, and so that sense of childlike wonder, that is actually what has inspired all the volunteer work that I have done since then. And it inspired that children's book series. Yes, it's for children, but it's absolutely for adults. And I feel like this sense of belonging relates so closely to having that childlike sense of wonder, that
Mm.
childlike sense of possibility, and just a sense of goodness and innocence, and of connecting to something that is greater than ourselves.
Wow. Thinking about goodness and innocence and compassion and imagining you sitting under that area of green and feeling so free and loved. And it's such a beautiful picture that I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people today sit in that space, but what a gift, and how interesting then that that led you to live such a life rooted in compassion. I think the best children's books teach huge life lessons. And Pedalwink, she's so free and so aware of others around her. You definitely bring that sense of wonder, and your work is so compassionate and you live that way. So let's turn to your work with reemerging citizens. First, what is that and how did you come to work with them? So just like give our audience a kind of broad vision of what a reemerging citizen is.
Yeah. So there's reemerging citizen or returning citizen, RCs, we call them. Those are people that are coming back from out of incarceration and coming back to the outside population. And I got interested in this work in around 2003 is when I first got involved being a volunteer Christian Science prison chaplain. Christian Science volunteer chaplain. That's the right order. And one of the reasons I was drawn to the work was that I had gone through some traumatic experiences growing up. And somebody had hurt me very deeply. And what I realized was if they had felt loved, they would not have done that to me. And that enabled me to have great compassion for them, which helped me forgive them, which helped me find a sense of freedom. And so I thought, gosh, how many people are incarcerated um, they're in that position because they didn't feel loved. They just didn't have a sense of belonging. And I realize that's oversimplifying it, but kind of not. And
Yeah.
so in order to work out some of my own issues, I just really felt like being able to love on these people and just say, "You are not forgotten, you are not alone." That was a way to help me feel that childlike sense of wonder again,
Mm.
and to help them feel that too. So of course when I'm going into prison and jails, I'm not telling them about Pedalink, but I do remember that feeling. I remember that feeling of being a child and feeling like there's a place for me to do some good, and I thought everybody deserves to have that feeling. So I go into prisons and jails. Lately, I've been doing almost entirely correspondence because my work has shifted from working with people directly in prisons and jails to people who are returning citizens. So the recidivism rate is alarming. So recidivism is obviously that they go back to jail and they come out and they go back to jail and they keep coming. They are kind of stuck in the system. And
Okay.
that is 75%. 75% of people who are incarcerated
Go
are
back to
are
being incarcerated.
they once they're
Wow.
released, they go back to being incarcerated. And so, of course, a ton of that has to do with how they think of themselves and if they're able to find a place where they belong, and if they're able to find a community that sees them and wants what they have to offer. But of course, that begins with them knowing that they have something to offer. The other thing that's a really horrific statistic, and this is just one special thing about our country is 11% of the entire world population. But those in prison in the United States or incarcerated individuals in the US make up 25% of the world's incarcerated population.
So
Now, if you
over
think about that,
double.
yeah. So
Wow.
if you think about India and China and how what the massive population in those two countries are, and we, the United States of America, we have a larger incarcerated population than those two countries. There's something wrong here. And yeah, there's something wrong. And I believe that our priorities have come to be so much about power, domination, and money. And it's almost like we think that those things are a band aid somehow. We think that those are
Mm.
the things that are going to bring us happiness and belonging and a sense of fulfillment. And clearly, we are sorely wrong about that. Those three things are doing none of the above. We are not happier because we have more money. We are not happier because we are powerful or dominating of other cultures or other countries or other races or other people. These things are not bringing us happiness. And so of course it's going to filter down to our justice system, and we're going to see a lot of people that are trying to use whatever means to get those things, to get the power, to get the money, and then not only does it not work, they end up incarcerated. So I think the work that you are doing with belonging and with championing the worth of everybody to be who and what they are, and to see everybody as our family, and to bring that sense of love and affection to everybody that we meet, that is the revolution we have been waiting for. And sometimes it feels slow going because the power and the domination and the toxic masculinity, frankly, is so fast and so sudden and so harsh. It feels like, oh my gosh, this movement of compassion and love is like taking a long time to get a groundswell. But it's like the trees in the winter. They look dead, but that's when they're most active. And we're in the winter right now of our compassion. We're in the winter of our belonging,
Wow.
and the spring is coming. We're going to see all the work that has been done. And the beautiful thing is, it will include even the people who think they only care about the power and the dominance. They will be included in the love and compassion. And I feel hopeful about that.
That's beautiful because we can't say that we need to love the homeless and the
Right,
incarcerated and youth who've aged
right,
out of foster care, and we don't get to love those who have
right,
chosen dominance and power. Like we
right,
have, if we're
exactly.
going to say everyone belongs and everyone deserves love, then everyone is everyone. And
Yes.
that's hard. It's so hard
Yeah.
in today's climate. Like it's just really
Yeah.
difficult. But you're right. I think of it often. I know both of us are in the US, and we're in this great country. And yet,
Hmm.
if I built something like upcoming with the villages,
Hmm.
if more than half the people in a village were living in a really rough manner, like
Yeah.
either they didn't have food or they didn't have proper lodging or they were really unhappy or mentally ill or whatever, as the leader,
Yeah.
I would take personal responsibility for that and figure out how to fix those problems.
Right.
And unfortunately, it seems like we're in a society that would rather keep all of those things in shadows because they're hard, they're difficult to fix,
Yeah.
and instead
And
focus
because
on glitter.
and it might be different for every person too. And I think that's really hard. It's like, oh, we get to take each individual into consideration. There's not always just a blanket answer for everybody, and I think that's really hard, and that's the problem with authoritarianism or dictatorship or the patriarchy. It's like, "Here is the fix-all Band-Aid, and this applies to everybody." It just
Yeah.
life just doesn't work that way.
Right. Right. There's not an easy answer. And it's
Right.
easy in our like mechanistic world to like, how does it work? And let's fix it all and then it'll all be perfect. And it's not. We're a living system. We all have
That's right.
different personalities, different backgrounds, different
Mhm.
experiences that shaded us one way or another when we were young.
Yeah.
And moving into love, moving into compassion, moving into seeing, truly seeing each other
Mhm.
is slow and it's hard work, but it's meaningful and it's powerful.
Yeah.
So, in your work with RCs,
Yeah.
what does belonging look like for someone they've paid their debt to society and now they're out, but they feel permanently labeled? How
Yeah.
can we as a society now make them feel belonging again?
Yeah. I think, for me, I'm gonna do a disclaimer. God is just a huge part of my life. I can't separate God from any of the work that I'm doing. And my favorite word for God is love. And so I feel like that is the thing that is most needed is for every individual to feel loved by love. And
Mm,
then that opens them up to feeling loved by others, or more importantly, loving others, because being loved is not as important as loving. Because I think as we love,
mm,
that's where we find our sense of belonging as we are doing it. But we have a hard time doing it if we don't feel loved by God, by some source, that we are needed by the universe to fulfill a specific, unique role that nobody else can fill. And I think with belonging, maybe, I don't know if this is the antithesis or the inverse, but our desire as a society to compare ourselves to others, oh my gosh, it is a horrible addiction. We have got to get over it because, of course, preaching to the choir. Nobody can possibly compare their journey with someone else's.
mm,
It just can't be done. And so I think part of that is in my work with returning citizens and with those who are still incarcerated, it's to find that love within themselves, that they have a relationship with something bigger than
mm,
themselves. And then that is what opens them up to have healthy relationships with other people. Because then healthy relationships with other people, we don't see other people as a threat. We don't see other people as somebody who's going to take something from us. We don't see other people as competition for good. Like, no, there is enough good for all of us. So instead, we see people as, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity to love them. This isn't because what's more empowering and what feels better than when we can actually help someone else? So, a lot of working with returning citizens is getting thought off of themselves in a self conscious way, and instead having their thought about themselves be more expansive in seeing their worth and seeing what they have to give. And there's a fine line because there's, you know, making a lot of ourselves or being self-conscious. That's not the same thing as loving ourselves. I love this definition of love, that when I'm loving you, Melissa, I'm identifying you with your divine source. And so we need to learn to love ourselves. We need to learn how to identify ourselves with our divine source. I mean, we just see limits fall away when we do that. And so that's what I feel like uh my big uh calling is, to help everyone learn to love themselves. And as you know, when we're called to do something, it's usually because that's the thing that we need the most. So
absolutely.
that's something that I'm working on every single day, and every single day is like brand new information, like, "Oh my gosh, I need to love myself," or, "Oh my gosh, I had a moment where I actually felt that connection with the divine," and it feels new every single day. So, I'm definitely, not called to do it because I'm good at it, but because I need it.
What a beautiful journey we have to be able to find being humans and yet being in a spiritual journey. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to get so in our head and wrapped up, and all we see is the human part.
Yes.
But then when we can start remembering the spiritual part and what we're here
Yeah.
for and who we're connected with, whose breath is in us, like
Yeah.
being part of a divine plan.
Yeah.
Like if you can think about that every morning, like I'm here for a divine purpose and a divine plan that is bigger than anything I can possibly really
Yeah.
wrap my head around. Like I
Yeah.
can't figure it out. Like there's no
Yeah.
little box. We might feel comfortable in a little box because we feel certainty, sort of a
Yeah.
false certainty, but we may
Yeah.
need that. But when we can
Yeah.
let go of that and understand, you said it so beautiful, like just there's something so much bigger than us, and we get to play in that play. We get to play on that playground,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then equating God with love, like to call God love, that
Yeah.
definitely has been lost in current culture and it for hundreds of
Yeah.
years, maybe thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think
that's
so.
true. Like there's
Mhm.
no mistakes here. You can't look at creation. You can't look at the complexity of the human body and not know that there is something so much bigger and so loving.
Yeah.
Like if I created something that went bad in so many ways, I don't think I would be loving about it. So yeah, God is so much bigger than us, and we're
Yeah.
so fortunate to have that love and that forgiveness and acceptance. And if we can truly tap into that and believe that, then it stops being about trying to manipulate and trying to have power over, and it turns into how do I love better? I was working with someone here who had recently come out of prison and was having a lot of problems because where they felt like they belonged was the old friends that they ran with when they grew up.
Exactly.
And that
Exactly.
they had to
Yeah.
find a new place for belonging, and they had to learn that you get to change when you're a human. You can be someone
Yeah.
different. You can choose different friends. And that's hard because you have to belong to yourself so that you can open up and
Exactly.
belong and be vulnerable enough that people will come and champion for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. So let's move into a slightly newer calling that you've had. We've just talked about it briefly, and I really want to hear, I want the listeners to hear the story, and I want to go into it a little bit deeper. You've had an opportunity to embrace and help um, Burundian refugees.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How did that get started?
Yeah.
I think there's more refugees right now on the face of the earth than there ever have been.
11
And
million.
el-
11
11
million. Mhm.
million people displaced from their country. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't. Yeah. Oof. Okay. Let's get into it. Tell me.
I know, I know, and, I think just even saying that number or the previous number about people that are incarcerated, uh, um, sometimes those numbers can be so daunting, but when we can affect one life and we see how huge it is to affect one life, because I just think about for me, if somebody has done something for me and endless people. I mean, I have a list of people who have helped me, who have inspired me, who have nurtured me, who've encouraged me, who've given me a smile that people I'll never see again. They have no idea how much I needed that. And that little tweak, because when you're sending a rocket off into if it's slightly off like that, just that tiny little bit, they're going a way different direction, but they're trying to go to the moon. Look at that little direction. So anyway, I just think of the smallest thing we can do can change the whole direction of a life. I don't know where I'm going with that,
That
except
one
that
degree, that 1 degree. Absolutely.
yeah. And I think, yeah, the reason I was bringing that up is because these numbers are so huge, like 11 million. What can I possibly do? Like, we can start where we are. We can start with loving ourselves, and then we can be ready. When we love ourselves, then we are ready and open to love other people and go, okay, what do I need to do here? So my husband Whit and I had started our own little church group. And then with this little church group, there was another church group in a refugee camp in Tanzania that said, hey, can we join your church by WhatsApp? And we're like, sure. And we got to know these people, and I don't even have words to express how deeply wise, how profoundly joyful, how sincere, and how um substantial isn't
Oh,
the word, but they understand what substance is.
mm,
They have very, very little, but as they've said numerous times, they have all because they have God, and they mean it. Those aren't words. They mean it. So I've learned so much from them. So we've gotten to know them every Sunday, and we would have a gratitude meeting on Wednesdays. They were sharing their gratitude and the things that they were grateful for. So substantial, just blows the stuff out of the water that maybe the average American might either take for granted or not even notice. It has been really an educational experience, just spiritually educational, emotionally educational. Well, so they're in this refugee camp, and about let's see, in October, Tanzania had an election. Oh, it seemed like it was not totally on the up and up situation, and the president won by 98% or something like that. That seems pretty unusual, but okay. That would be great if that were the case. Let's work towards that. But anyway, there were protesting, and then the protesters were killed, many of them killed. There were mass graves. There was all this stuff. And this is, by the way, stuff that we are not hearing about. Like, that's a huge story. We are not hearing about that because of the emergency in our own country. And our own country, actually, Wit and I had been traveling a year ago for 6 months, and we were in Africa for part of that time. While we were in Africa was when US aid was cut. So that affected this refugee camp. It's affected literally the entire world. So that's the kind of emergency I'm talking about with our country, how our country is affecting everybody
mm,
else. So anyway, so with this protesting happening in Tanzania that nobody knows anything about because we're watching this song and dance in the United States. They cut the internet off for a week, and we were like, this is weird. We can't get a hold of anybody. Finally, one of them was able to call out and get a hold of me and tell me what was going on. And it kind of went downhill from there. So they're in a United Nations refugee camp, but because our country has cut US aid, and because when I called the United Nations refugee department, three different departments, when things became an emergency at this United Refugee camp. And they said, I'm sorry, we can't take any calls right now unless you're being detained by ICE. So yet again, here's another way that this is affecting the entire world. So what was happening was that Tanzania decided they did not want Burundian refugees in their country in this United Refugee camp anymore.
So
So they
Burundians, they went to Tanzania as
yes,
refugees to the UN
yeah,
refugee camp. Okay, got it. Keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah, there was political violence. Burundi was not safe. A couple families had left Burundi in 1972 and gone to Rwanda, and from Rwanda they went to a refugee camp in Tanzania. So this was 72, 97, and then they went back and forth.
Wow.
Then they came back to the refugee camp, another refugee camp in Tanzania, the one that I'm talking about now, in 2012, and left, and then came back again in 2015, and they've been there since now. So they don't have homes in
They've
Burundi. Just
lived in a
go home to
they've lived in a refugee camp for decades.
decades. So most of the people that we are in contact with right now were born in a refugee camp. So they've never
Wow.
lived in Burundi. So the Tanzanian police are sweeping through and destroying their homes and then posting their name saying, you must repatriate. So repatriate means go back to your country. And that's illegal. Uh, there's a United Nations or Article 23 that says this is illegal for a host country to forcefully repatriate people. But again, there's nobody to enforce this. There's also the International Rescue Committee. They have stopped feeding them. They were providing food. They have stopped feeding them. So the other part of this camp is Congolese refugees. So on the Burundian side, in order to force them to repatriate, they've cut off their food supply. So now they're going over to the Congolese side, and fortunately, thank God, the Congolese are saying, yes, you can buy food from us. So at first we saw this need. Okay, we asked our friend who used to live at the camp and was in the United States but is now living in Burundi, and he's helping us. We said, if they could leave, would they want to? And he said, oh, 100%. Of course they would want to leave. The camp is really like a prison. They can't leave without permission. They can't start businesses. Things are confiscated. There are raids that they can never predict. It's just not an environment. Refugee camp is not the proper term for what this is. So he has been able to help us find out what's happening out on the ground. And then we've reached out to a bunch of friends. And what the idea that came, our friend said, if they knew that they had enough food to get from the camp to Burundi, then that could help them go. So we raised enough money so that they would have 6 weeks worth of food. We're talking beans, rice, maize, oil, salt for 6 weeks, each individual. Then that would at least carry them over into this, new transitional experience. However, UNICEF, who is providing the transportation from from the Tanzanian camp to Burundi, they are stretched as well. So they have 17 buses twice a week, and I think there are 40,000 Burundian refugees. There's not enough room. So there's this long waiting list for people to return to their country. And we're only talking about one refugee camp. This is just one refugee camp. Um, so there's all this governmental corruption. And so what that has taught me, and not in a jaded way, but we cannot depend on organizations. Like you said at the beginning, we belong to each other. And the reason we belong to each other is because we are brothers and sisters. We are children of divine love. And divine love shows us how to treat each other. And
Ooh.
divine love shows us that we can take all limits off of either being self-conscious or being like, oh, the problem's too big, I don't know how to do it, or, any sense of not feeling up to the challenge. We can love. We can love. We can love. It's not hard. We can do it. So we just very simply sent out some emails to people, and then what we discovered, so we raised enough money for them to be able to get into Burundi, but then it stopped and they are not able to get into Burundi. So we asked our friend, well, wait a minute, if they cut off food supply, are they hungry? And he paused and he said, yes. So we said, okay, what do we need to feed them right now? So they're able to have enough food until they are able to get out of the country. The Tanzanian police said they have 7 weeks before the entire camp will be destroyed. That was their prediction. So a lot of this,
So
obviously,
7 weeks to go, but nobody's providing them a way or a how-to or the resources to go.
yeah, yeah. So UNICEF is
You
providing
don't
a way
belong
for them to,
here. Go
yes,
somewhere else.
right. Yeah. So they're really creating an impossible situation. I think that's what's so hard about the dominance and the power. People have thrown around the word efficiency here in the United States. There's nothing efficient about violence, dominance, and power. There's nothing efficient. There's nothing efficient about destruction for the sake of destruction.
Right.
So this is not doing Tanzania any favors, and they took away their refugee status. So they're like, you are not welcome in our country. You are not even refugees anymore. So it's like, wow. So the only thing to do is to go moment by moment, breath by breath, thought by thought. What do we need to do to help? And a lot of that, helping people really requires that we take very good care of ourselves, or else
Yeah.
we're not going to be much help at all. So a
Right.
lot of that step by step is breath by breath, like, okay, I'm breathing, I'm listening. What do I need to do? I just need to be still and just love in this moment? Do I need to take action? Who do I need to call? And in the meantime, we're constantly in touch with them and constantly reassuring them you're not alone, you are seen, we're with you. And their gratitude is just they've multiple times that we don't even know how to find the words. We don't even know how to thank you for this. And we know how they can thank us by doing what they have been doing at the camp. They have started foundations to help the orphans. They have started schools to teach kids. They have done what they can to help their neighbors. And so that's the love that just keeps multiplying. And so what I'm needing to remember is that their lives are not on hold until they get to Burundi. They can continue to do that right now. And that love, their ability to love and care for each other is their empowerment. So they are step by step finding their way, and we just get to be witnesses to it. And it's our way of saying thank you for all the people who have helped us and loved us and encouraged us. So it's been an education on every single level. And it's also been an education about the role of the United States. And this is I wanna say it's not political, because there are certain things I don't think are political. I don't think how we treat people is political. I don't think how we care for the environment is political. Um, I don't think human rights are political. And so I'm not making a political statement when I say that the role of the United States, the reason that we have so much is so that we can give it. And that it does not deplete us. It never has. It just doesn't. So that's been an education for me too.
Wow. So much comes down to our humanity. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to think, oh, someone else is going to fix it. I'm going to stay in my
Yes.
own little comfy circle and let somebody else deal with it. But when you look at like glaring humanitarian problems, refugees,
Mhm.
homelessness, youth aged out of foster care who don't have the skills to survive, incarceration, like you can look at this world and see how broken and fractured it is. And I wanted to ask you, not that there's a simple answer to this, but if we could rewind and go, wow, where did it all go wrong? Like, how can we be such a wealthy, like really the wealth in the world, the resources in the world, the way that we have logistically to move things around the world? This is 2026, and we actually have an amazing amount of intelligence and resources. When did all of that start going towards maybe consumerism or hedonism, whatever word you want to use? When did we lose sight of the humanity that is so suffering in order to separate ourselves from it and think that achieving the next shiny object is what really matters? Because I know when you do the work you do, that you have that sense of belonging and fulfillment and love. So as humans, why are we not drawn to that? Where did it all go wrong?
Is that rhetorical? Do you want my honest answer?
I would love your honest answer if you have one. It's a
Of
huge
course
question.
you would, because 'cause you're Melissa. Um, I Here's where I think it went wrong. I think it went wrong in 325 AD with the Council of Nicaea. Up until that point, Christianity had been called, I mean, it was Christianity, but it was called the Way. And it was the way because it was a way to have your own relationship with the divine. And the effect of having your own relationship with the divine is that these Christian principles were love God, love and honor the divine, love yourself, and give of your heart's rich overflow. So be so filled up with love, acknowledging who you are as a child of divine love. You're so filled up that you're giving of your heart's rich overflow. You are loving your neighbor. So everybody that you come in contact with, you are coming into contact with them for the purpose of loving them, even if you might call them an enemy. And those were just like the fundamental principles. And out of those principles, people were living in ways they were able to heal themselves and others. They were able to grow spiritually. They were able to thrive spiritually. And the second the Council of Nicaea happened and the Way became a state run religion, as soon as it became regulated by the government, that inspiration and that spirituality became something else. It became a way to manage people. It became a way to control people. It became a way to have power over people. And the point of the Way was that every individual is empowered to think for themselves. But now suddenly, the state has made it a requirement to be this religion. By the state taking control of it, then they were able to, say these are the rules and we're imposing our will on you. It had nothing to do with spiritual growth or flourishing or thriving. It had everything to do with control. So I feel like because of that, Christianity has not been the same since then. And what I practice is considered primitive Christianity. So in other words, it's not so much about a religion as it is about what did Jesus teach us? How can I follow that example? And the more I learn, the more I realize how matriarchal the society was that Jesus was, because with his disciple, he was a teacher. He was a nurse. He was a nurturer. He was a healer. It was so much about
Mm,
collaboration and learning together. And I think that was one of the reasons that when people had a hard time recognizing that, oh, this is the one that was supposed to come, they had a hard time recognizing that because he didn't come with an iron fist and beat down his enemies. He said,
mm.
love your enemies. And they're like, no, you're supposed to. You're supposed to beat
Overthrow
them down
them.
and
Overthrow
overthrow
them. Let us
them.
be the top. Oh no, you're
Exactly.
right. You're
Exactly. So
right.
it was like they were expecting a patriarch and they got a matriarch. I think we're in an era right now where we're starting to wake up to all the ways that don't work. And we're being forced to look back to a time when it did work. And that is when people were free to have their own relationship with the divine.
Mm,
And that is what empowered them to live their lives and contribute. And again, if this, what Jesus said, to become like a little child. So I think, wow, that's exactly right. Because that was that moment of childlike wonder where I just felt like I was, that sense of innocence. It's not innocence like behavior. Oh, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not behavior. It's innocence of the sense of a pure relationship with the
mhm.
divine that nobody else can impose their opinions or beliefs on. Is just between me and love. That's the
Mm.
kind of innocence that I feel like is being demanded of us to get back to.
It sounds powerful. Like, let's not go fix the things. Oh, let's use less fossil fuels and let's have more social programs. That doesn't work. We've proved it decade and decade and decade over. Let's get back to us, our connection to the divine,
Yeah.
our love. And if every person showed up with someone else, showing love and creating belonging, logically, that would solve a lot of our problems a lot more quickly
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
than huge programs would.
Social programs don't seem to work. We need the individual.
Yes, we need every single citizen, every single human showing up with love and with belonging and saying, you know what, not on my watch. I can't
Yes.
care for everyone in the world, but I can care for the people who
That's right.
cross my path. I can care for
That's
the
right.
people at my arm's length. And if we did
Yeah.
that, what a massive effect it would have very quickly in the world if we stopped
Yeah.
thinking it was about me and what I want and my achievements and started thinking I'm here to serve others. Like
Yeah.
it would be such a shift if we could
Mhm.
really get into our nurturing hearts as women, but also I think a lot of men would be a lot more nurturing if they
Absolutely.
were allowed, but they've been taught this,
Yeah.
power and dominance. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, what it, talking to you, knowing that you're working in the midst of all of these fractured systems, like literally to the people, not you don't have some big, heavy, ideal about
Yeah.
those people over there. Like these are people that you work with on a daily basis. So it means so much coming from you. And thank you for all your thoughtfulness. One thing I want to ask you, because for a long time now, you've worked with people that are fractured and hurting on levels that most of us don't deal with on a daily basis. And for me, moving forward into Elevate Villages, and this will be
Mm.
my work for decades to come.
Oh.
How do you tend to your soul? How do you keep filled and joyful even when you're around all of the heaviness of the broken world around you?
I think it's definitely my spiritual practice that has to be totally separate from exactly the things that you're talking about. My spiritual practice can't be anything based on what is happening in the world. It's got to be taking the temperature straight from divine love. I definitely do that every single morning. I check in with divine love. Okay, what do you see? What do you know about me? What do you know about my capacity and my potential? And so it's just literally filling up every morning with my prayerful practice, definitely reading scriptures, just quiet time, meditative, prayerful time in the morning, separate from the world before I get into the news, before I check email, just to have that time with God and that protected time when I make that the most important part of my day. It's amazing how the rest of my day goes, but it's one of the hardest things that I do is just have that protected time alone with divine love.
Mm. I will thank you. I will make sure that that's always an incorporated part of my day.
Yes.
So for some of our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed right now, unsure, like how do I respond to all the pain in the world? It's easier to look away. It's easier to put them somewhere else. But for those who do want to respond to the pain in the world, what would feel like a really honest first step?
An honest first step is to take care of yourself, and that means this is something that my husband Wit was able to articulate in a really beautiful way. He said, "What if we treated our own consciousness? What if we treated our own thinking as a baby?" As what how would you treat a baby? You would feed the baby, you would love the baby, you would nurture the baby, you would never expose the baby to something harmful. You wouldn't leave the baby out in the cold. You wouldn't, you wouldn't submit the baby to loud noises and chaos and whatever. You just have such a nurturing environment for this baby, but we need to treat our own consciousness that way. We need to treat ourselves that way, to have so much love and tenderness, how we speak to ourselves, how the thoughts that we think about ourselves and to ourselves. I think starting there, the ways to help will become so evident and it'll just be like a gentle dawning almost like,
Mm.
oh, there's an example right there. And you and I have talked about this with our belonging group, and you gave that great example of, so you're in the parking lot of a grocery store. If you saw somebody that needed help and you're like, "Oh, and for a variety of reasons, you might not feel like helping that person. You were embarrassed or you didn't have time or you didn't but if you were like, but if that was someone I loved, of course I would in a heartbeat go help them. None of those
Mhm.
things would matter." So I think when we love ourselves, then we see those opportunities right in
Mm.
front of us to
Mm.
help. And we don't feel embarrassed or self-conscious or annoyed or whatever because we're so filled up full that we're like, "Oh my gosh, here's an opportunity to help right where I am." And we're just so excited and we're actually looking for those ways to help. It doesn't have to be on a grand international scale. It doesn't have to be going into a prison or jail. But if that's what people are impelled to do, there's nothing to stop them from doing that. The only thing that stands in our way is our thought of ourselves. It's our own sense of limitation. It's our
Uh,
own sense of not feeling worthy or not feeling like we have something to give. So if we can get beyond that, oh my gosh, the world is our oyster. It's full of pearls of opportunities to help.
Angela, I have one more question before we
Okay.
wrap up. If you could whisper one truth to people who feel unwanted, people who feel forgotten, people who feel like they don't belong, what is one thing you would want them to know?
I would want them to know you are dearly loved forever. You are needed. You are wanted.
Beautiful. Angela, thank you for sharing your heart and these sacred stories and experiences. Today, we have been reminded that belonging isn't something people have to earn. It's something that we choose to extend to those around us. If this conversation stirred something in you, let it soften the way that you see and hold others. Quick shout out to our patron, Dee Laughlin, who is the embodiment of
Yeah.
creating belonging for those around her. Dee, thank you so much for making this podcast possible. This has been the Belonging Podcast by Elevate Villages, where we build belonging together.